Welcome to the session. In this session, let's discuss about impact of waste accumulation. So we have seen the use and throw concept in the previous session. With the continuous use of this throw concept, in the present generation, waste has been increased. We can see solid waste accumulated in street corners, roadsides, around hospital, in lanes of the colonies, school backyards, everywhere we can see the solid waste. Dumping of this solid waste, it gives an ugly look and a foul smell to the environment. Apart from the foul smell and untidy look around the environment, it causes a serious threat to humans' health. The accumulated solid waste, which is not cared, it slowly starts to decompose, and a number of pathogenic bacteria are nothing but a disease producing bacteria like virus and fungi grow on this accumulated wastes. Insects like flies, rodents, etc. live in that solid waste, and this insects, rodents and flies, it carry germs around them and spread to the human beings. Decomposition of this waste, it produces harmful gases which pollute the air around us. So during rains, this accumulated solid waste is carried by the rainwater, and along with that, it carries a pathogenic bacteria that contains a disease spreading germs, and that rainwater is flown through the rivers, ponds, wells, etc., and it causes water pollution. All this leads to the epidemics and other health hazards of the living beings. Spoilage of landscape. It is one of the impact of waste accumulation. Most of the world's solid waste, it is simply dumped into a vacant land, into an empty land, and it is getting decomposed. And this open dumps, it ruins the natural beauty of that particular land, and it also provides a home to many rats and other disease carrying organisms. Due to this spoilage of the landscape, many monuments, it has been affected by the acid rains. Example, the Parthenon of Athens, the Colosseum of Rome, the Taj Mahal of Agra, Lincoln Memorial of Washington, Parliament Building of Ottawa, House of the Parliament in London, Cathedral of Cologne, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Tower of London, etc. Many of the monuments, historical monuments, has been affected due to this acid rain. Burning of the coal, fuel or petroleum, it produces sulfur and nitrogen which reacts with oxygen, and it is converted into oxides like sulfur oxide and nitrogen dioxide. And this oxide, it reacts with the water vapor that is present in the atmosphere. After the oxides react with the water vapor in the atmosphere, it forms acids like sulfuric acid and nitric acid, and this acid, it precipitate with the rain to form an acid rain. A chemical reaction, it occurs between the acid of the acid rain and the buildings, and this chemical reaction, it exerts a pressure on the monument surface which leads to corrosion of its body. And the gypsum and the calcium sulfate, it is washed away by water which causes damaging marks on the statues and monuments. Limestone statues, it is also destroyed naturally because carbonic acid which is present in the rainwater, it converts limestone into bicarbonate which is water soluble, and it is washed away easily. Pollution. Pollution is also an impact of the waste accumulation. The word pollute means to degrade or to make dirty. Pollution means it is a modification of the natural world which causes entirely or partly due to direct or indirect actions of the human beings. Pollution, it is caused by man due to the addition of waste toxic chemical substances to the environment. Pollution is also caused by other substances which is not dangerous to the organisms, but they have an adverse influence to the environment. The handling of solid waste, it is a problem because most of the disposal methods, it causes harm to the environment. Both open dumps and the landfills, it contains toxins that seep into the soil. That means it causes a soil pollution and the water pollution. The uncontrolled burning of the accumulated waste, it creates smoke and other air pollutants. That releases a toxic substance into the environment which causes a breathing problem to the humans. Industrial waste, it contains harmful chemicals and toxic heavy metals like lead and mercury. And these toxic chemicals, it is a heavy metal and it get deposited in the animal tissue and it harms living things along the food chain. For example, a grass gets some toxic chemical from the soil. Animals eat such grasses and it gets affected by the toxin, and these animals directly or indirectly pass these toxins to the human beings through their dairy products or meat, etc. As the accumulated waste decomposes, it produces a large quantity of the methane gas, and this quantity of methane gas is said to be highly explosive. Water pollution. Water pollution occurs when people dump the garbages in the rivers, ponds, streams, etc., or when the waste drainage water is connected to the rivers. It causes a water pollution. Eutrophication. Eutrophication, it is a process of depletion of oxygen. That means the oxygen levels in the water get decreased and water bodies feel suffocation due to the decreased level of oxygen in the water. This process of eutrophication, it takes place due to the introduction of nutrients and chemicals through a discharge of domestic sewage, industrial effluents and fertilizers from the agricultural field. Algae and phytoplankton, they use carbon dioxide, inorganic nitrogen and phosphate from the water as food. They serve as a food to small microscopic animals, which are called as zooplanktons. And small fish feed on zooplanktons, and large fish in turn consume small fishes. And when nutrients become more abundant in the water, that means when the waste is accumulated more in the water, it leads to the growth of phytoplankton and algae, and the penetration of the oxygen, light and heat into the water body gets reduced, and this causes death to most of the aquatic organisms, draining water of all its oxygen, and this process is called eutrophication. Let's discuss how the accumulated waste affects the health of the humans. It affects the health through the spread of disease through contamination. People suffer and die every day due to the illness related to the hazardous waste. Industrial waste, it contaminates food and water supply, which pose a serious threat to the human beings. Lead, it is a harmful toxin and it affects the development of child's brain. Asbestos, it can cause a respiratory disease known as asbestosis, as well as it can also cause chest and lung cancer. Mercury, it is a highly toxic chemical which attacks the nerve system, which causes brain damage and even death. Arsenic, it is another chemical that has shown to cause cancer. Effects of the toxic particulate materials. Lead, it affects the blood system, behavioral disorders, and it can also cause death. Cadmium, it causes cardiovascular disease and hypertension and kidney damage. Nickel, it affects respiratory system and lung cancer. Mercury, nerve and brain damage, kidney damage. Beryllium, it causes berylliosis. Asbestos, it causes asbestosis, shortness of the breath, pleural calcification and lung cancer. Biomagnification. The term biomagnification means increasing the concentration of various toxic substances along the food chain is called as biomagnification. Toxic substances at the level of primary producers, it gets concentrated at each trophic level as they move up the food chain, and the phenomena of the concentrated toxic deposition at the higher trophic level, it is known as bioaccumulation. Wherever a small amount of toxic constituent which is neither excreted nor metabolized, it gets increased as the food chain. It moves upward from one tropic level to the next tropic level, and the toxic constants it become concentrated. An example of the phenomenon of biomagnification, it was first noticed in Illinois, USA, where the elm trees it was sprayed with DDT. A large number of birds like robins died near these trees. It was later discovered that these birds perished due to DDT poisoning. Radioactive waste, which is produced by the nuclear reactors and weapon factories, it causes potentially serious threat to the environment. Radioactive waste, it is present in small quantities and remains extremely harmful to the human health for many years. Let's discuss how the waste accumulation affect the terrestrial life. Accumulation of the solid waste, it looks ugly, it gives a foul smell, it attracts insects, rats and other animals that spread diseases. Burning of the waste in the open dump yards, it causes smoke and foul smelling in the air. Sanitary landfills are not fit for human settlement because methane and carbon dioxide gases start coming up in the first 2 years. So these are the gases that are produced when solid waste starts decomposing underground. The figure represents a person affected with the radioactive waste. Urban and industrial dust, it have a dangerous chemical properties and that cause a harm to terrestrial life, and they cause different types of leaf injuries, decrease in transpiration, reduction in photosynthesis, reduction in biological nitrogen fixation, increase in respiration rate, reduction in biomass causing loss of productivity and economic yield. Waste accumulation and its effect on aquatic life. Untreated sewage, it contains a disease carrying bacteria, and that bacteria it consumes excess of algae and uses up oxygen, which causes aquatic life to perish. Pesticides, it destroys soil productivity and it can also flow into underground water or other water system, and it poisons the aquatic life. Carelessness and the deliberate dumping of wastes and the oil spill in the seas, oceans, it pollutes the water and it even damages the beaches. Marine pollution, it is a greatest threat to the sea life. Let's have a look on case study of the Minamata tragedy. This Minamata, it is a coastal town in Japan and it had a factory of vinyl chloride in 1952. And that factory, it used to discharge effluents like methyl mercury into the sea. This methyl mercury, it can break the barrier between blood cells and the nerve cells, and thus it reaches the brain to cause a progressive irreversible damage. So in the 1953, some fishermen fell ill in Minamata, and their illness it was detected to be caused by consumed fishes caught from the Minamata Bay. Fishing in Minamata Bay it was banned in 1957 as the mercury was identified to be the reason for that toxicity. The epidemic in Minamata was known as Minamata disease, and the mercury content in the Minamata it contaminated and killed a different seabird species feeding on fishes. Mercury contamination it also resulted from the wastes of other industries like paper and pulp industry, chlorine industry, pesticide industries, etc. Pesticides with mercury it add a considerable proportion of mercury to the natural water bodies. That's all for the session. Thank you.